Was the Wii U underrated? You tell me. So this is just a sentiment I've been seeing a bit more frequently recently, you know, kind of romanticizing the Wii U era and saying like, oh my God, the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo doesn't have the same heart, the same soul they had during the Wii U era. Did we live through the same goddamn era? Listen, I know a lot of people look at me like I fucking love the Wii U, man. It's just, I bathe in these things, you know? I shower in Wii U. It's what I do. But listen, I need to set the record straight. I don't think this is a good video game console. I'm obsessed with it because, like, this was my game console during my most formative years as a video game fan. I described this a bit in the Wii U retrospective series of Scott the Woz episodes, but yeah, so I was like 16 or so during the Wii U generation. And when you're 16, you know, like you're starting to grow up a little more. You don't have as much of like that childhood whimsy, but you're not a full-blown depressed adult yet. So hey, I'm able to drive and I have a part-time job that I go to, which means I have a bit more money I can spend on video games. But I'm also still a kid, so I don't have as many adult responsibilities, nor does it really feel like a giant waste of time to spend pretty much every waking hour of my day reading about Nintendo game previews or watching videos on YouTube about upcoming or retro Nintendo games, which I do that entirely now, and I feel like dog shit. But back then, that was my whole life, and as a kid, you don't really care about that kind of stuff. You can just do whatever you want all day, every day, and you don't feel like a pile of ass. And yeah, kind of living through the Wii U generation, that was my whole shtick back then. I was so damn interested in every little thing going on in Nintendo's life at the time, man. I was listening to podcasts while I drove or while I was just playing video games. I was reading articles and following YouTubers talking about the Wii U at the time and the 3DS, and you know what? Yeah, that era is special to me. However, I think anybody claiming that that era was better than what we have now or what even came before, I think is romanticizing things to oblivion. There is some good stuff in the Wii U generation, no doubt. But we had to go through so much swamp ass. So I just kind of want to talk about some things that people romanticize about the Wii U era, and just tell you what I think about it, and if I think a lot of it's all it's cracked up to be. Because I'm gonna be honest, not only did I live through the Wii U era, I lived through it multiple times over and over and over again, researching these godforsaken videos I do. Working on the Wii U retrospective episodes of Scott the Woz, yeah, I mean, like, I already knew the Wii U era was bad, but living through it again, I'm like, holy fuck. So argument one I hear when it comes to how the Wii U era was better than the Nintendo Switch era was how Nintendo was at their creative peak. No. I'm gonna be honest, for the most part, Nintendo's output on the Wii U, while it was fairly high quality, it was all unbelievably safe. And on top of that, I don't think Nintendo ever knew what the hell to do with the Wii U gamepad. They would either not utilize it, or when they would utilize it, I wouldn't necessarily call it creative. But I digress. Let's take a look at Nintendo's library of titles for the Wii U. You have New Super Mario Bros. U at launch. Okay, that is the worst possible example for Nintendo at their creative height. But the Wii U was also bundled with Nintendo Land, which I will definitely say has a lot of creative ideas in it. I'd say that's still probably the best usage of the Wii U gamepad. But at the same time, a lot of things in that game feel like they were really stretching for their ideas. It's not that it's bad, it's more so like they were trying to find as many different uses for the Wii U gamepad, and they came up with like 3 good ones, and the rest of them you're kind of like, okay. Yeah, Octopus Dance in Nintendo Land. You see your ass on the gamepad, and you use the sticks to move your hand. it's dumb. Now we had like Game and Wario, which is very similar to Nintendo Land in terms of its purpose. It's just kind of there to utilize the gamepad. And there are some creative uses for the gamepad in Game and Wario, but not a lot. And I think if anything, Game and Wario and Nintendo Land, these games were meant to showcase how many things the gamepad can do. But in reality, I think like when you actually play them, you start to realize like, oh wow, this is all they came up with? You have a controller with like 1 billion features in it, and you have a WarioWare-esque game, and WarioWare games, specifically like WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii, they came up with like hundreds of uses for the Wii remote. And this one on the Wii U can barely come up with like 10 ideas for the gamepad. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are also just the most basic ideas, and they end up being the most fun, like sketching Game and Wario. That's just Pictionary. They didn't come up with anything for that one. It's just fucking Pictionary, and it's the best game in Game and Wario. Pikmin 3 is wonderful. It's still just kind of Pikmin. Uses the gamepad primarily just for a map, and the setup they want you to use here is the Wii U gamepad in your lap the entire time, and you use the Wii Remote nunchuck on the TV screen. Yeah, the Wii U definitely fostered a lot of really awkward-ass controller setups. Like, remember how they expected you to play split-screen multiplayer in Splatoon? What is this, a horror movie? Wind Waker HD, I mean, like, it had some good uses for the gamepad, but a lot of the features that they introduced in Wind Waker HD kind of felt like they were just reinterpretations of the features introduced in Ocarina of Time 3D. You know, you have gyro aiming, and then you can use the gamepad to adjust your items on the fly, and you also have a map screen down here. All stuff Ocarina of Time 3D did. And once again, all these games, as decent as they all are at the very least, I don't really consider them to be peak creative Nintendo. We have a 2D Mario game, a not WarioWare game, the third Pikmin game, which I absolutely adore, but it's still just the third Pikmin game. Wind Waker HD, it's a remaster. And then Mario 3D World came out on Wii U, and it's like, yeah, it's a great game, but at the same time, I don't really think this is Mario at his creative peak. And then after that, we get Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, Smash Brothers for Wii U, Hyrule Warriors, Bayonetta 2. All amazing games, but at the same time, like, these are very derivative titles in their respective franchises. And I'm not saying that to make them sound like they're not as good as they really are. No, I absolutely love all of these games. But Hyrule Warriors is very much a Dynasty Warriors game with a Zelda skin. Bayonetta 2 is just a direct follow-up to Bayonetta 1, and it's on just absolute fucking bananas mode. But yeah, these are all pretty much sequels, very good sequels, but you know, nothing crazy. But I will definitely say, you know, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker on Wii U, phenomenal game, a wonderfully creative idea right there. Yes, it is a spin-off slash sequel slash prequel to Super Mario 3D World, but that is definitely a very interesting idea, kind of born on Wii U. But yeah, we have Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, which is completely carried by its art style. Other than that, it's just, you know, it is a follow-up to Kirby Canvas Curse, and it is a fine game, but that game is entirely carried by the absolutely gorgeous art style. Mario Party 10 may possibly be the worst Mario Party. Its ideas are okay, like the Bowser Party idea of using the gamepad is a fine enough concept, but my lord is it horrible. But we also have Splatoon and Super Mario Maker, and I will concede, I think these are the two games people probably are talking about when they're talking like, oh, Nintendo's at their creative peak, because by God, they're probably not talking about Devil's Third. And I know I'm kind of just going through all the Wii U games and saying like, that's not creative, that's not creative. I don't mean to be like that. It's more so like, a lot of the Wii U lineup is kind of just sequels to Wii or 3DS games. And for the most part, Nintendo played it pretty safe with a lot of them. Like, I love Tropical Freeze. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It is very much a follow-up to Donkey Kong Country Returns, and they expanded upon a lot. They fixed a lot of things. They added new characters. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. But at the end of the day, you could also still just call it, oh, it's another 2D Donkey Kong. Splatoon is a completely original idea. And the fact that it did so well on a console that failed so miserably, it genuinely kind of feels like that was like the Wii U's Animal Crossing moment. How Animal Crossing debuted on, well, technically N64, but GameCube everywhere outside of Japan. And it's like, here you have a brand new IP on a console with a pretty damn low install base. but it ended up becoming literally one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. And Splatoon is the same deal, and weirdly enough, it's done by the team who develops Animal Crossing. And then you look at Super Mario Maker, a game that actually utilized the Wii U gamepad in an incredibly useful way. I still think the way you create levels in Super Mario Maker is one of the best ways to create levels in any level creator video game. Way better than Mario Maker 2. And Mario Maker 2 is definitely the better game overall, but I had way more fun with Mario Maker 1. So yeah, I think examples like those are definitely where the Wii U's creative energy really peaked. But by the time those games came out, it was already said and done. Nintendo already announced that their next home console was on the way, and there really wasn't much of anything of note after those games. After Mario Maker, we got like Yoshi's Woolly World, which is a great game. I love Yoshi's Woolly World. But I mean, again, it's just kind of like, hey, it's another good Yoshi game. We got just some bad games with Mario Tennis Ultra Smash and Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, Star Fox Zero, which I know Star Fox Zero has a couple of people that just like it, and you can like it, fine enough, but if you're gonna call that creative peak Nintendo, motherfucker, it's just a retelling of Star Fox 64. Twilight Princess HD, yeah, okay. They published Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE, which, I mean, that's creative, I'll give you that. And the major last final Wii U exclusive was Paper Mario Color Splash. And I like Paper Mario Color Splash, but I don't really think that should be considered in this argument. It is a very, very flawed game, and it uses such little of its own unique characters that, hey, I think it's impressive that they were able to make an RPG out of pretty much nothing but the same damn toads on screen for like 30 hours, but they did it, so that says something about the game right there. I think that's impressive. It doesn't make the game any better, but, you know, I think the game's okay. But I think just comparing the Wii U's entire lineup to the first year of Nintendo Switch, I feel like just shows like Nintendo really kind of kicked themselves into gear. I mean, like, you start that console generation off with Breath of the Wild. Of course, you end the Wii U generation off with Breath of the Wild as well. But then we move into a brand new IP right at the start of the generation with ARMS. ARMS is kind of a love it or hate it thing, but I always really liked the characters of ARMS. I like the world, I love the graphics and the music, and the gameplay is fun. It just doesn't really interest me for over like 30 minutes. But I mean, you just compare like Super Mario Odyssey to Super Mario 3D World, and I feel like gameplay-wise, you know, you can like one over the other for sure. But when it comes to personality, when it comes to like actual tangible, like, oh my god, these designers are so creative, like, there is so much more to latch onto with Mario Odyssey than Mario 3D World. And on the Switch, you get all this wacky nonsense with stuff like Nintendo Labo. And sure, you may be looking at that and being like, I don't give a damn about Nintendo Labo, but mark my words, in like 10 years, you're gonna see a bunch of kids going like, I miss Nintendo Labo. That's what I feel like a lot of this stuff is with Wii U. You spend the entire generation barely using the thing, or barely playing it, or only playing like 4 games, and looking back at the whole thing and going like, oh my god, that was peak. I'm like, was it? Because in my opinion, the Wii U had a library of pretty solid games, but it was a very safe library. It's one of the reasons why I don't think the Wii U really sold all too well. I do think a lot of it has to do with the console itself. The Nintendo Switch proved that a lot of the Wii U games were pretty damn good, and they could have sold the console if the console itself was actually desirable. Because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling Switch game with 60+ million units sold. It does show that, like, yeah, Mario Kart is very high in demand, and when that game is pretty much the same as the game that released on Wii U, it should show, like, yeah, I think the Wii U console itself was a big problem here. But I see so many people going like, oh my god, but the Wii U console itself has so much character. The menu setup has so much character. Look at this user interface. It's so nice. Oh boy, man. I mean, listen, I do agree it has some character, but I just kind of feel like the Wii U's menu is pretty boring. I think the original Wii menu has much more character. I think the 3DS menu has way more character, especially when like every single game icon has this floating 3D image that goes faster when you blow into the microphone. The Wii U has the Wara Wara Plaza pop up on screen, and then all your games appear on the bottom, and everything is so damn slow. And it was way slower before they kept updating the system software. And the fact that when I use the Wii U now, it's still like unbelievably slow, that should show you how slow this thing was when it launched in November of 2012. It was bad. And I just don't really think for how long it takes to load everything on this console, I don't really think the character of the menu setup really makes it worth it at all. The Wii menu has a genuine feel to it. Like when it pops up, I feel like it's like I got transported into the Wii dimension, man. It has such a unique vibe. It's so easy to like parody the Wii menu because it is so unique. The Wii U feels like it's struggling to find its own identity. It feels like it's kind of like trying to be like the successor to the Wii menu, but also be very similar to the 3DS menu as well, but also be its own thing because like, oh, let's put the Wara Wara Plaza up on the TV screen. But it's like, I don't really feel like all this stuff really connects well. It doesn't really feel like you snap your finger and go, aha, this all makes sense. Like they wanted to give you a reason to have all your games on the bottom screen and then like maybe like a screensaver, I guess, on the top screen. But it's like, I don't really know. Like, nothing really correlates. It's not like what I do on the gamepad connects at all to what's going on the top screen. It just feels like it's something for people to look at while you're going through your game library. But why can't it just be all one screen at that point? Like, you're telling me, like, it's impossible to have this collection of Miis on screen, but also have, like, a grid of your game library that you can shift through? Yes, it's nice that there's, like, music in the background of everything on the Wii U. I do think it genuinely shows a ton of effort that Nintendo went out of their way to give like every single application and every single little thing you're doing on the Wii U its own background noise. But I feel like we're debating stuff that doesn't matter at all here. Yes, the Nintendo eShop ran a lot better and had music on the Wii U compared to the Nintendo eShop on the Switch. The eShop on the Switch is a laggy, stuttery mess with no music, no personality, and as the years have gone on, it's gotten worse and worse to visit it. It gets slower and slower with age. I hate going on the eShop now. Back in the day, it was fine because there wasn't as many games, but I genuinely feel like it's about to blow up whenever I visit it. But like, does that really make for a better console? Does that really make for a console with like, oh my God, I love this console so much more. It plays music on the eShop. I'm like, yeah, that's cute, but that doesn't make for a better console. I feel like you're kind of lying to yourself at that point, and you're kind of looking back at this era with a lot of nostalgia, which I can't blame you for. I do that too. I look back at this era with loads of nostalgia. I love this era, but like, I never want to relive it. It's like kindergarten, you know? I look back at kindergarten with nostalgia. I look back at like when I was 6 and I'm like, oh wow, like how fun that was. I never want to relive that. Why would I? It's really easy to have nostalgia for this time. You know, I look back at it with a lot of fondness. I think it was a very special time because being a Nintendo fan didn't feel like you really had a large community surrounding you. Felt like, you know, we were kind of the underdogs. You know, the Wii U did not sell very well. There were not a lot of Wii U owners out there, and the 3DS was doing all right, but it wasn't really hitting the big time like the DS was, you know? So when it came to stuff like rumors and talking about all the games coming out, and even like all the indie releases on Wii U, you know, you kind of just felt like a bigger, genuine connection with every game coming out because, you know, there wasn't a ton of games coming out, and, you know, whatever was coming out that week or that month, you know, like that's what all the Nintendo fans were talking about. These days, we don't really have that because there's so many games releasing. It's to the point where a lot of the stuff Nintendo publishes, nobody even talks about because they publish so much stuff and it's not meant for any of us who are like talking about Nintendo games feverishly all the time. Like when Nintendo published DC's Superhero Girls. Back during the Wii U era, Nintendo Directs felt a lot more personable. You know, a lot of that was due to Satoru Iwata, you know, like he was a living legend. And it didn't really feel like he was an actual like corporate person. Like, it felt like he was a genuine fan of all the video games Nintendo put out. You know, he was a game developer first, and then he became president of Nintendo, and you could feel like every single time he would host Nintendo Directs, like, it was almost like he was offering you all of the games Nintendo was putting out at that time and going like, hey, what do you think of this? I made these for you. It also really helped that Iwata was just like, he was just a dork. Put a lot of his own humor in the Nintendo Directs. They did a lot of wacky stuff. It made for incredibly memorable presentations. But I dare you to rewatch any of them now. They are much harder to get through. And that's what I'm saying. I don't really think that makes for a better era. It makes for good memories and a good time there. But yeah, I think the Nintendo Directs of the Nintendo Switch era, I feel like Nintendo has a lot more to actually say with these, and there's actually a lot more substance with them. I look back at Nintendo Directs from, like, let's say 2013. Nintendo put out a ton of Nintendo Directs that year. They were putting out like one every single month. And as a fan, like, that was super exciting. It was like, man, there's stuff Nintendo has to tell us all the time. But you look back and they're just repeating info all the damn time in these things. Like, they talked about Game & Wario in like 5 separate Nintendo Directs. And like, they just would talk about the same games over and over and over again. And eventually they got really good at like, okay, so you start off with a big announcement and you end with a big announcement. But that middle, like, there would be nothing to it. They would just be talking about like 3DS eShop games the entire time, or talking about Pikmin 3 DLC. And some of these things I genuinely cared about. Yeah, it's really cool. But when you compare it to the Nintendo Directs from the Switch era, where it's like the June 2024 Nintendo Direct, it starts off with a cold open, just a Mario and Luigi trailer. Oh, nothing special here. It's a brand new game that we thought we would never get. It looks absolutely beautiful with amazing animations and a great art style. And then they move into just some headlines, going through them rapid fire. I love Iwata to death, but my God, his Nintendo Directs were stilted and awkward. And that element made Nintendo Directs really memorable back then. But it did not make for great presentations. Like, I swear to God, he was filming them in a gym half the time. Then we have headlines and they randomly announce Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And then they go into Dragon Quest 3 and then Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes. And then more headlines with more third-party publishers. And then we actually get a brand new Mario Party game, a brand new 2D Zelda. And that's just the middle. And then we go into more third-party announcements. And then we end on a look at Metroid Prime 4, the most anticipated game from the generation. And during the Wii U era, I swear to God, all these announcements would have been spread across like 9 different presentations. I have a lot of nostalgia for the Directs of this time, but yeah, we have it better now. We have to admit it. These presentations are way snappier. They are way more laser focused. They know what people want. Sure, there's going to be a misfire here and there, but it feels like Nintendo has really locked down on how to do Nintendo Directs. But I will admit, they do lack a lot of the personality. All of these Directs definitely blend in together. And it was definitely fun that we got these... Oh my goodness, look at you, huh? Don't tell me you like the Wii U generation too. Oh my God! Oh my God, little mackerel, you do like the Wii U gamepad, do you? I like it too, but we got to admit, you know, it's not that great. And we're definitely romanticizing the Wii U era sometimes. But you know what? It's okay to look back at things with nostalgia. But we also have to admit, hey, this wasn't that great sometimes. And I don't blame people for romanticizing the Wii U era because it did feel like a very special time. You know, like I've said, you know, like you were in the bottom of the barrel as a Nintendo fan this generation. You got so little and you had to have a handheld that was outdated as hell with like a 240p screen with a gimmick of, oh, glasses free 3D that like nobody cared about 2 years in, and a home console that got like maybe 6 games a year, and it's up in the air if you're gonna care about any of them or not. But like I said, there was like this feeling that you were a part of a team. You were a part of the losing team with the Wii U. And that made whenever it had a home run, it made it feel so damn good. I remember back in 2014 when we got Mario Kart 8, Smash Brothers for Wii U, Bayonetta 2, an amazing E3 2014 presentation with Zelda Wii U being shown there. All these future games that looked super cool, like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, that looked incredible. They showed off Splatoon for the first time. It felt like there was a future future for this console and that things might turn around. They didn't, but still, it felt like this console was on top, like back in 2013 when Super Mario 3D World launched. That launched the same day as the Xbox One, and when that launched and like, oh yeah, like pretty much all the games that came out are just kind of like, whatever, 7 out of 10s, who cares? You had a potential game of the year on the Wii U. One of the best Mario games, or at least like I kind of feel like people were like overselling Mario 3D World at the time. I love Mario 3D World now, especially with the Nintendo Switch version, but at the time people were acting like this was like a revolution. I'm like, nah, it's just a very good Mario game. But it was easy to look at things like you were like in this family during the Wii U generation. And then with the Nintendo Switch, it feels like, oh, everybody's a part of this. So you know how like, oh, a lot of people, like when things start to go a little mainstream, they lose interest. It's almost like it was your little thing and now it's everybody's thing, and that kind of loses some of the fun for you. I think that's a little silly, but you know, I understand it. There's always something in your life that just feels so much more like special when, you know, not a lot of people know about it or are interested in it or share it with you. And when you have to share it with the entire world, it becomes like, oh, great. Listen, man, I've been around the block. I can talk about this in the form of another video game analogy. I've seen so many people get really pissed off about like retro video games going up in price because people are talking about them. And oh God, I hate that mentality. So like if like a YouTuber or something talks about a very niche retro video game and then that causes the prices to increase, or at least it seems like it causes the prices to increase, a lot of people would be like, that son of a bitch. And I'm just like, listen, man, that sucks that the price is higher, but the price being higher indicates that more and more people are interested in retro gaming. Something that back like 20 years ago was like this incredibly niche thing. It's like, okay, sure, you could go to a garage sale and you could buy a bunch of retro games for like $1 each because nobody cared. But, oh great, you have all the retro games to yourself and you're all alone because there's nobody else to talk about it with. I think it's great that more people are getting interested in this stuff. Yes, it sucks that prices rise because of that, but I think it's amazing that it's a lot easier to just find people that have the same interests as you, and you can relate to more people about those interests. Back during the Wii U days, I didn't know like anybody else for the longest time that gave a piss about this console until like one coworker I had when I worked at a grocery store was like really into collecting video games and also had a Wii U and was really excited for like Smash Brothers coming out, and I was like, thank God. And you know what? That was really special. But you know what else is really special? The fact that like everybody I know now has a Switch and everybody can kind of talk about some of the games coming out, or you can discuss with them if they don't know a lot about the games coming out. You can maybe help them figure out like, hey, which games may you like next? Justin really liked Breath of the Wild. And then he asked like, oh yeah, is there a new Zelda game coming out? And I'm like, yeah, it's Echoes of Wisdom. You'd hate it. Like, I know he just wouldn't like those 2D games, but hey, at least like there's something to talk about there. But I think the fact that Nintendo has become like a more like general company where, you know, like, hey, they're appealing to millions, tens of millions of more people than they ever did before, it almost like makes people feel like, oh, the soul has left them. I'm just thinking like, was it ever there? You can look back at like every generation of Nintendo. They were always doing slimy business garbage. They were doing dumb bullshit back during the NES days, SNES days, these days that people claim are like this golden era of Nintendo. I'm like, have you played Uniracers? Is Stunt Race FX really something to hold up in such high regards? A Donkey Kong Jr. Math, Urban Champion, Hey You Pikachu, Disney's Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse. These are all games that are just garbage. The point is, I always see so many people say like, oh, the Nintendo today is different from the Nintendo of like a couple years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years. And I'm just thinking like, what company isn't like that? Let alone, what person is like that? I want to meet them because they will freak me the hell out. You know what happened since the Wii U generation, moving into the Nintendo Switch generation? Nintendo got a lot smarter when it came to their business practices. You may not like them, I don't like all of them, but they became smarter. I know a lot of people look at the Wii U like they were so experimental, and that was fun. And I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, they were also very experimental during the Nintendo Switch generation. They're just a lot smarter about it. Hell, when Nintendo's experimental, most people criticize the hell out of them, especially in previous years, because those experiments overtook so much of what they were doing. Back in E3 2009, when Nintendo showed off the Wii Vitality sensor, there's a big reason why people were clowning on that. Because, like, that was such a focus of, like, what the kind of stuff Nintendo was doing at the time that people were sick of it. During the Nintendo Switch, I think Nintendo does a good job supplying, like, their hardcore fans with legitimate software that they will like, and also, like, doing the casual stuff, doing the kind of fun, wacky, weird stuff. They put out a fucking alarm clock this generation. Oh, but you know what a lot of people point to about the Wii U being better at? Virtual Console. And this is something where, like, this is some revisionist ass history here. Acting like Virtual Console was this amazing thing on Wii U. It sucked ass on Wii U. I think it's crazy because you know what everybody was saying during the Wii U generation? Why can't Nintendo do a Netflix model for Virtual Console? Oh, you subscribe a certain amount per month and you get just all of these classic games. We got that and people just bitch about it. Well, at least now I think a lot more people are like very receptive towards it because at least back in the day, you know, they really drip fed a lot of this content. You know, it took a while for it to build up to the point it is. But at least like, hey, like the Nintendo 64 offerings on Nintendo Switch Online far exceed what we got on Wii U and Wii Virtual Console. N64 games on Wii U Virtual Console pretty much like capped out at the amount they offered on Wii Virtual Console, which was roughly like 20 to 30 games. And then on Nintendo Switch, they're actually offering like games that they weren't offering on those systems. A lot of the rare stuff and just random third-party games, you know? Iggy's Wrecking Balls, anybody? But the emulation is far better. It looks way better. The Wii U Virtual Console emulation for a lot of the systems, N64 and NES specifically, looked horrible. I hate how they looked. They ran bad. They looked bad. They felt bad. All of that. I don't like it. Sure, you're able to buy the game separately. I think that is definitely a problem with the Nintendo Switch Online service. The fact that you can't just buy the games themselves, like they're only ever a part of the Switch Online membership. That's the only way you can get them, which does mean you don't actually own the games, which is a problem. But at the same time, that was kind of a problem with the Wii U Virtual Console. They were reselling so many of the same damn games we already got on the Wii, and they looked worse than they did on the Wii. And it's like, no, it's not exciting to get volleyball on NES for $5. I'm much more likely to play that game if they just add it into a subscription service that I'm already paying money for. And sure, you do have Wii games re-released on Wii U. You do have DS games re-released on Wii U. That's something. TurboGrafx 16 was on Wii U. Nobody knew about that and nobody bought the games, but they were available on the eShop. But for starters, I think Wii games and DS games were able to be just flat out Virtual Console games on Wii U because of the hardware. Nintendo Switch, that's a lot trickier. Wii U was fully compatible with the Wii. I mean, you could hook up Wii remotes to it. You had a sensor bar, all of that stuff. Nintendo Switch, that's not really the case. So you have to kind of re-release those games. So I don't think it's fully fair to complain that the Nintendo Switch just doesn't have like, oh, a bunch of Wii ROMs available at any given moment. The Wii U is like perfect for DS games. So it's just like, yeah, it makes sense that they offer DS games on the Wii U eShop. Nintendo Switch, you could make that work, but it's definitely a lot weirder. So yeah, sure, that's a point for the Wii U. They had DS games, but one, they didn't have a ton of DS games, and two, like, how many of you actually bought a bunch of DS games on the Wii U Virtual Console and played them? Not a lot. And even when they were doing that, people were complaining. They were like, give me a subscription service. We got a subscription service. Man, Wii U Virtual Console was so much better, even though none of you bought the fucking games on Wii U Virtual Console. Ugh. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I don't think Wii U Virtual Console is better than Nintendo Switch Online, what they're offering, at least nowadays. Maybe back in 2018, 2019, 2020, back when, you know, the classic games lineup wasn't anything crazy. Sure, yeah. But at the point it is now that it has Sega Genesis, N64, Game Boy Color, and they're also getting like all these third-party games, Perfect Dark, GoldenEye 007, that's crazy. Yeah, that's just my opinion. I don't think the Wii U Virtual Console was anything really to write home about. So I gotta ask, is the Wii U underrated? I think the Wii U was a very special time for those who were there and had it during that whole generation. And I think if you pick one up nowadays, there's a couple of games that I think are definitely worth playing on it, that I think will always kind of remain probably pretty exclusive to the Wii U. I think Nintendo Land is great fun. Game & Wario has some fun stuff. It's a good Wii. You know, you can play Wii games on it with HDMI. You know, I love playing Wii games on the Wii U. But after revisiting the whole generation, I do have to say, I do think a lot of people romanticize it. And like I said, it's for good reasons. Like, I do romanticize it as well. But it was rough. And a lot of the games that were released on it, while very good and I have fantastic memories of, they just didn't sell the system. They were kind of just like sequels to games that already existed on the Wii or 3DS. And they just didn't really do anything in the grand scheme of things. Now, as games on the Nintendo Switch, I think they work a lot better. Mario Kart 8 works well on the Nintendo Switch because everybody wanted Mario Kart 8, even during the Wii U generation. Nobody wanted a Wii U, but you have the Nintendo Switch with Mario Kart 8 on it. The Switch already is a much more appealing product, and Mario Kart is an appealing product. So, like, yeah, Mario Kart 8 did fine on the Wii U, but I think it does show that while games do sell hardware, the hardware itself needs to be good. If your hardware is kind of just a pile of goat shit, it's still gonna be a hard sell. The hardware needs to be appealing in of itself, in addition to the games being good. And as much as I love looking back at this generation, I do have to admit, you know, when you look back at everything, the Wii U's fate makes all the sense in the world. Did it deserve better? I think it kind of got what it deserved. This console pretty much only appealed to hardcore Nintendo freaks. And even then, I don't even think it did a great job being a Nintendo freaks just playground. Like, oh my God, I'm such a Nintendo fanboy. I love this thing. No, I feel like it was more likely that most people had a better time on the 3DS that generation. Like, I think at the end of the day, the Wii U, it got what it deserved. That doesn't mean it isn't a fun novelty and you can't have a great time with it. But, you know, talking about it in its generation, yeah, I think it got what it deserved. It was kind of a pile of trash, but it's my pile of trash. I will stand by this console till the day I die. But I won't really defend it much. But hey, if you think the Wii U was completely underrated and deserved better, I agreed with you at one point or another. But at this point in my life, you know, I have looked back in retrospect and I do realize I was a fool.